Hello and welcome to the new edition of Sound and Image Lab, the Dolby Institute podcast. This is a podcast about how artists use technology to tell story, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. When we started this podcast back in 2014, it was really a passion project. And so I'm really proud of the way the audience has grown with us, both audio and video professionals, students, film fans from all around the world. We've really just been so pleased with how enthusiastic all of our followers are. So we decided that in 2021, we really wanted to kind of step our game up. So please take a look keep an eye out for some very interesting and fun announcements around the podcast over the coming months. So maybe most importantly, for the listeners who enjoy this show as an audio podcast, we are pleased to announce that the series now exists in its own standalone podcast feed. I want to thank the intrepid producer, Michael Coleman from the Soundworks Collection, who's hosted our podcast since we began. But we ask now that you subscribe to the podcast on our brand new dedicated feed, which you can find simply by searching Dolby or Dolby Institute on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Links for those, as well as the RSS feed and the new and improved website, are located in our show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the description below. So this is going to be our last episode on the regular Soundworks podcast feed. So please go subscribe to the new show feed right away. There you'll find this episode, as well as the archive of all 75 episodes going all the way back to the beginning. And as always, this podcast is going to be free and without any advertising. And if you're already a regular listener, if you want to start watching these bi-weekly conversations, because we do record video with all these talks, you can do so on Dolby's dedicated YouTube channel, which you can find by searching Dolby over at YouTube or clicking on the link in the show notes. So as we kind of relaunch the podcast, it's really appropriate that we take it back to where we started. The very, very first Dolby Institute program that we presented publicly back in 2013 was at the Sundance Film Festival. And we brought in a pretty amazing group of speakers to talk about the importance of sound design for independent film. And we had Ben Burt and Randy Tom and Erica Dahl there, and we had a really amazing discussion. So Sundance has always been really important to us at the Dolby Institute, and they've been a great partner to us. So I'm excited to relaunch our show with a conversation about Sundance and the Sundance Institute. And so our guests on the show are Keri Putnam, the CEO of the Sundance Institute, Tabitha Jackson, the brand new director of the Sundance Film Festival and her first year at the helm of the festival, and Michelle Satter, who is the founding director of the Sundance Labs at the Sundance Institute. It was an interesting conversation because it's an interesting time for Sundance. This year is the very first virtual Sundance Film Festival because we can't make it to Park City this year in Utah. So, when we typically think of Sundance, it's a bunch of indie filmmakers trudging up and down Main Street in their huge parkas and standing in line for movies. And so, we wanted to find out what's the virtual version of that going to be like, and what is the experience of the Sundance Film Festival this year. So we have the answers to those questions and so much more on the show this week. So let's jump right in. All right. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for joining us on the show. I know this is, as we talk, we're just a few days out from the kickoff of the 2021 Sundance Film Festival. So it's a tremendously busy time for all of you. Michelle, I know you just wrapped up the Screenwriters Lab about an hour ago, which is amazing. So again, I just really wanted to thank all of you for making the time to join the Dolby Institute podcast and to talk to us today. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, I want to just say it's at about this time that I would normally be going through the closet and pulling out my big parka and my boots and all my cold weather gear and getting ready to go to Park City to trudge up and down Main Street in the snow, and looking forward to standing in long lines and being on the shuttle bus and hearing people talk about the amazing movies at the festival. And so obviously none of that is going to be happening this year. So Tabitha, I wanted to start with you. You're the new festival director. What does it mean to have a virtual Sundance Film Festival this year, and how are you pulling that off?
Well, first of all, Glenn, I want to say, thanks for having us. And also, don't let the nature of the festival stop you going into your closets and picking out special outfits. That's what we'd love everyone to be doing. And we talked, jokingly about it's slippers rather than snow boots this year. But still, what is at the heart of this festival, and always will be, is an incredible array of cinematic voices, creators working in different storytelling forms using different technologies, and the possibility of discovering new talent, new ideas, new forms. So we have 70 incredible new feature films, 50 shorts, an array of XR, virtual reality, augmented reality, in our New Frontier space, which I'd love to talk about here as well. But this, along with the bumping into people, the encounters, the talks and events, the dialogue around the films, our partners expressing in their spaces, this year, all of that is happening on a specially built festival platform, which means that as we began planning it, making sure that we could go ahead with a festival no matter what, it means that we have this rich expression of creativity, even in the midst of a global pandemic, political unrest. We know that we can have our festival. And in addition to that, to the festival platform, we have independent art house partners that we're calling satellite screens across the US, who are also screening the work where it's safe to do so, and who are programming, engaging the community around the work of Sundance. So what started as a disappointment, which is, we're not going to be able to have the festival that we had wished when we looked at this in April, May, quickly turned into, wait, but we can do this thing. We can increase our reach and accessibility, and we can work in partnerships in ways that we've never been able to do. So what this year's festival looks like is a whole heap of fun.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up especially the concept of the satellite festivals, because that was something that was immediately really captivating for me. And it seemed like, taking the Sundance goodness and kind of spreading it around to, I think, some really interesting independent art house cinemas in different cities it's a great way, to your point, you were saying, in many ways this year is a disappointment, but it's also giving a lot of opportunities to completely do something fresh and new. And I'm kind of curious, now that you're into it and very close to actually having this thing go, what do you think? I mean, I presume at some point we will get back to Park City and have Sundance as we've known it. But are there innovations that are coming out of this that you think will carry on past the COVID Sundance?
Yes, absolutely. And please don't call it the COVID Sundance. I don't know. This unique special edition Sundance has given us already, it's given us so many things. We now have an incredible platform, screening platform, that we can use all year round to highlight the work of independent filmmakers, to convene people in discussion around. There are the things that we have built that didn't exist before that we now have as part of our work. The innovation, which it's more of a value than an innovation, but being able for the festival to include in those first audiences for this new work, people who, for many reasons, financial, geographical, physical, couldn't have come to Park City, could never come to Park City. They are now part of the Sundance community. And so to have this work, I think there's a real value in this too, Glenn, that the Sundance community in Park City is very particular and specific. And we have been working over the years to make it broader and more inclusive. Nothing could compare to having this work be seen at the same time across the US from a way broader range of audience and a greater set of perspectives coming around this work, who can then talk about it in this festival moment and propel it into the more broader culture and have it there as a talking point throughout the year. That is something that I would not wish to go back from. But one of the things that makes this this process, even though it's hard, is also fun, is thinking that this year is a set of experiments where we understand what we might wish the Sundance of the future to look like. And so some things will work brilliantly and we'll keep them, and some things won't and we'll let them go. But going into that confidently with this audience, and tickets are selling incredibly well, so we are going to have a robust community of explorers with us to say, all right, what do we want to do next time? So I don't think you mentioned going back to Park City. Oh, yes. But going back in exactly the same way as it was before might seem to be a lost opportunity for us.
Right, right. Well, Keri, I wanted to kind of just take a step back. I think, you know, even for a lot of people in the industry, when they hear Sundance, obviously they think about the film festival, but that's just one part of what the organization is and the mission of the Sundance Institute. So I'd love for you to kind of just open our minds a bit to what the work of the rest of the organization is.
I would be happy to, and certainly we've been talking about the festival. It is obviously our most visible program, but what you're right, Glenn. I think people don't realize it sits alongside, the festival sits alongside and among a really wide array of programs that support artists, independent artists year round. And these programs run across all storytelling disciplines, from feature film to documentary to live performance, emerging media, short film, series, podcasts, film music, and more. And the ways in which we support artists working in these forums are extremely varied. You know, we provide mentorship, residential labs. You were mentioning the lab Michelle just finished, fellowships, direct financial support through grants. But the other thing I want to emphasize is that the festival isn't separate from that. We really see the festival as an integral part of that mission that we're serving to elevate, support, and amplify the work of independent artists, because of course, through the festival, this work gets launched, this work gets seen, and this community comes together. So we really see it as a seamless whole. It's just that the festival is the part of the iceberg that's above the water, and the rest often isn't so much seen.
And isn't it true that really that the talent development lab was really, that was the original kernel of the idea that Robert Redford had, and the reason why he went to Utah in the first place, right?
Indeed, and we do have the perfect person sitting here in this panel to talk about that, because yes, and I'll just tee it up for Michelle to dive into that. But the first lab was held in 1981, and it was a bold experiment coming from the heart of an artist, with a very clear vision and intent. And Michelle is our founding director of the Sundance Labs, and can talk to you a little bit about that moment and how it's evolved. So you should take that one, Michelle.
And it's the 40th anniversary. Is that what I just gathered?
Yeah, it's the 40th anniversary. Yeah,
amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I was there in 1981, and and it was spirited chaos in the best possible way. And yes, it was founded by an artist who wanted to bring community together, and believed that, filmmaking is a collaborative medium. And we brought 12 artists together. It was exciting, it was crazy, but it was a real opportunity for them to workshop the material and to learn, and to be amongst incredible mentors from the industry. For Bob, that culture of generosity is so much a part of, and for me, and for everyone now, part of the lab. that he founded, and it's an incredible space for people to be in, to really experiment, to push the boundaries of their work, to learn, to move on, make those kinds of discoveries, feel no shame about it, but really feel that this was the place where they could do that kind of work, and and also build their tools and their skills as artists, as filmmakers. So it was a very exciting moment. Yes, now we're 40 years later. And as you said, today we just finished a Screenwriters Lab, and there was so much joy that Sundance was continuing to support artists and particularly writers, the foundation of a film, to support screenwriters, at an earlier stage in their career, not only launch them, but again, provide a place to do that deep work in collaboration with more seasoned artists. But it's very much, we're all in it together. And it is a, sort of a beautiful, safe, inclusive space for that kind of, to really question, to really interrogate a script at a particular point and move it forward. And the community that everyone builds together is so special and so important right now, in some ways more important now than ever before.
I'm sure.
I just want to dive in on one thing about that, just to kind of put a cap on the 40-year question and this the founding vision. What's been so incredible for me, and I've been at Sundance only 10 years, but 10 years, is that the power and the clarity and the purity of that founding vision has been so strong, and it's been able to provide a through line even when our tactics of how to support artists have changed, like this year, especially working digitally, but in many different ways, forms have expanded, tactics have changed, the external environment has changed so much. But what's really amazing is how the power of that vision provides a tether for all of the work we do. And there really always is a need, I think, and an urgency for stories that reflect the world around us and challenge us and inspire us. And so it's been great to be tied to that vision, even as a newer staffer.
Without a doubt. Since it is the 40th anniversary, I'm kind of curious that, that mission to develop new voices and to give them really a way to kind of enter into the film business, which is notoriously hard to break into. How has the mission changed? Because the industry obviously has changed radically in 40 years, but how has the work of the labs and the Sundance Institute evolved to adapt to the changes in the industry?
What Keri said earlier is the mission, which was so clear and so strong, hasn't changed to a great extent. The core values of the Institute hasn't changed. The tactics, the work that we do to support artists in an ever-evolving ecosystem has to change and must change. And, and that's the work that we do on an annual basis as we look forward. And how has the industry changed? What does that mean for the artists that we're supporting? Because we're, our focus is very much on the creative. But our focus is also on how do we move these projects forward? How do we move these artists forward, give them the kind of visibility and support and connection to, to the industry that will, take them from in a sense, the incubator of Sundance into the world and getting made, because it's so important. And now we look at, where are the audiences and how are audiences consuming stories right now, and what does that look like and mean for the future? And we're asking those questions. We're asking along with the field as well. But it's an area that is of not only deep interest to us, but it is part of our work going forward.
Michelle, the Talent Labs have such a great reputation for finding new talent. I'm always curious to hear, who are some of the major directors who have come through the labs and then gone on to have really great careers in our business?
There's been a lot of them, which I'm really proud of. And I really, I see it. This is our distinct privilege to discover these artists and work with them. So some of them include Rada Blank, who has the 40-year-old version out right now, which is very exciting. Ryan Coogler, who did Fruitvale Station, and as you know, Black Panther. Keri Fukunaga, who's done the new Bond film, but did this extraordinary film, Sin Nombre, with us. Dee Reese, Gina Prince Bythewood, Lulu Wang, Boots Riley, Marielle Heller, Paul T. Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, Darren Aronofsky, John Cameron Mitchell. The list is long, but it is, for us, getting, sort of being with these artists at an early point in their career and providing them that space and that community to support their work going forward has been incredible. And what's really great is that these artists come back to Sundance. They have, succeeded in their careers, and they're coming back. They're our next group of advisors, which is so cool. At our lab that we just finished, Rodrigo Garcia was one of the advisors. Ritesh Batra, Walter Mosley. These are all artists we supported on their first films, and now they're our advisors going forward.
That's amazing.
There's some great nonfiction filmmakers as well that I know Tabitha in her old hat also supported that have come through. So it's it's such an exciting range of work.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Rodrigo Garcia, because that gives me a chance to kind of tee up our program and our collaboration with Sundance, which is really important to us at the Dolby Institute, which is the Dolby Institute Fellowship. And Rodrigo Garcia, of course, was one of our very first recipients of the Institute Fellowship with his film Last Days in the Desert. So I guess, Keri, I'd love to just kind of ask you, like, what's the role of corporations in the Sundance ecosystem, and why is it important to have the support of a company like Dolby in terms of technology and support?
I am so glad to be able to answer this question because, our partners and our sponsors are so integral to enabling all of the work you just heard Michelle and Tabitha talk about. Now, this could be as a festival sponsor or as a supporter of a particular program, extending our impact in their areas of interest. But what we particularly look for, and what I feel, with the Dolby Institute, we've really found is partnerships that can help us extend and enrich the support we give, and really help us with the skills that the companies bring or the partners bring, inspire new creative ideas, foster sustainable careers, bring attention to great artists. And for the past 8 years, I think it's been 8 years of our Dolby Institute Fellowship, it has been it's been extraordinary. It's enabled us to identify and support filmmakers whose stories I think have the potential to break new ground through innovations in sound design and sound mixing. And this support in particular helps us address a challenge that independent filmmakers face, a lot of them, which is the tension between their creative ambitions and their budgetary constraints. So by supporting, I think the Dolby Institute Fellowship at Sundance has supported 11 feature films in the
That's right.
11, and some wonderful films among them. I won't pick favorites, but Blind Spotting, Honey Boy, Mudbound.
Right.
It's really, and all the rest, Mike Cahill's film. But for these artists, the technologies like Dolby Atmos or Dolby Vision, they often consider it beyond their reach. And so it exposes them, I think, to a whole palette of ways to tell their stories and realize their visions. And it's the access to that technology, the support that Dolby provides to enhance their exhibition experiences at the festival. It's just a really 360 experience. And once again, it's incredibly aligned with the work we do that you've just heard all about, both in terms of the platform of the festival and the development of creative voices. So it's extraordinary, and we're lucky to have many corporate partnerships, many other partnerships in different ways, but the Dolby Institute's one is a shining example of alignment, and just want to say thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think, when we came in and we created the fellowship, and that meant, we wanted to give filmmakers the access to that technology, especially at the time, Dolby Atmos, to be able to tell a really immersive story. But then, of course, we had to figure out how will that experience happen. And so we had to come in and kind of figure out how to put a Dolby Atmos system in at the Eccles.
Right, and I should add, the other beneficiary, of course, is the festival audiences who get to have this extraordinary experience, and the Ray, to be in the theaters where you can actually experience that kind of quality at a festival that is, put up and taken down every year in makeshift spaces, is so extraordinary. And I think is one of the signature accomplishments of not just our partnership, but of our festival, to provide that kind of exhibition.
I agree with, and I appreciate you saying that. And I think for me, one of the moments that I was really proud of was after we put that Dolby Atmos system in, first at the Eccles and then later at the Ray. For the first few years, the only movies that were playing at Sundance in Dolby Atmos were the Institute Fellowship winners. But it was about 3 years ago that other movies started showing up, indie movies in Atmos, including documentaries. And that was really one of the reasons why we really started the program with you guys in the first place, was this notion of this is a technology that's designed to help filmmakers tell stories. And it doesn't have to be just about big budget, blockbuster, tentpole Hollywood studio films. Anybody who is taking the audience on a journey is going to benefit from having access to this technology. So
totally. And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tab.
No, I'm sorry, Keri, but I was getting excited because the partnerships. I mean, the Dolby Fellowship is one that we have filmmakers coming to us and asking, how is it possible to have access to, for the reasons we've talked about, and other partnerships where Skywalker, for example, enabling filmmakers. And as you say, Glenn, my background is in documentaries, so seeing how non-fiction filmmakers who often don't have 2 cents to rub together can learn about sound and the sonic landscape as a narrative device and think in another dimension around their work has been so valuable. And I think, I'm deeply happy that this year Natalia Almade's film Users, I think, is a recipient of your kind
of it's the first documentary that we've supported. That's right.
And that's really exciting to me because the film is so cinematic. It has that operatic scale to it visually, which is now matched sonically by having access to what you give. And I also, just a side note, one of the biggest challenges I think about doing a festival virtually, when we think of what is that, there are things that we can replicate or resonate with, and there are things that we can't. And so at the moment, maybe this is a challenge for Dolby, the feeling of when you're watching a comedy and you hear the laughter of people around you in theatre, how can we get that? We're going to miss it in a way. And equally, the sound of silence when an audience is completely gripped in a moment together, that sound does an extraordinary thing in gathering. And so it's something that we need to recognize, and maybe there will be technological advances in enabling us to hear our own reactions even in a virtual space. But sound is so key around this festival.
Yeah. I know the fiction film that's being supported is Passing, and it's Rebecca Hall, the actress. It's her first feature, and so exciting, and means so much to her because it really gave her the capability to create the sound that the film needed, and has enhanced it, fivefold or even more than that in terms of the work. And just the expertise and the generosity of Dolby has been so important for her and her team working on that film.
Well, thank you for saying. The program has been really important to us. It's been a great way to establish relationships with some new directors, and it's, you know, it's one of those situations where every time we develop a new technology and we let it out into the world, and then artists start using it, and they always surprise and delight us by going in wacky directions that we never anticipated. Probably never more so than the Daniels with Swiss Army Man. and that one got published.
I forgot about that one. Oh my God.
So Michelle, I did want to. I've got a question for you. I'm just really curious because I think a lot of people are would love to know what kind of projects are you looking for when you invite things to come into the labs. What you know, what is a successful Sundance Institute lab project?
Great question. And by the films that I talked about earlier that we've supported, I think they, in some ways, define that. So it's independent voice, bold and original ideas, stories that push boundaries, diverse voices and perspectives, very important to us right now. Complex, character-driven stories with humanity, and many with urgency. You know, stories that not only bear witness, but reflect the world we live in, but can rewrite the future that we want to live in. Those are the stories that we're interested in right now.
Fantastic. Tabitha, I got a question for you. You know, obviously this is your first year. It feels like just a few months ago. It's my whole sense of time in this era. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. But it doesn't feel like that long ago that we were sort of feting John Cooper and saying, you know, so long as he transitioned out from running the festival. But you know, you picked kind of a crazy year to step in and run the Sundance Film Festival. I guess my question for you is, like, at what moment did you know, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much harder than I ever thought it was going to be?
To be clear, I did not pick the year. Had I been picking the year, it may not have been this year. There was never, you know, it's a funny thing. It was such, and I mean this genuinely, it was such a privilege to be trusted with this incredible thing that is the festival, with all it means for audiences and for filmmakers and for the Institute. It was an incredible thing to be trusted with it. And so I approached it after I was getting over the shock of being offered it, approached it like, okay, like holding this precious vessel, and it's like, I must not break it. I'm going to carry it with two hands. I must not break it. The pandemic hit, and it was clear that, oh, I've got to break it. I've got to break it into pieces so that we can rebuild something to meet the moment. And so it was a liberating thing. I mean, being director of this festival would always be the hardest thing that I'd ever done. And so at least in this scenario, putting the loss and the difficult situations in which we are doing this, putting that to one side for a moment, there was something freeing about thinking everyone understands why we are trying to do this thing. And my role is to articulate a clear vision based in our values and purpose, make it okay for us to fail, and really trust. It's not just even trusting the process, because there wasn't a process for this festival, trusting the people who love this festival, which are the artists, the industry, the audiences, and of course the people who have put it on for the last almost 40 years, and just trust us to get there. So we did that scenario planning of what might be the conditions into which the festival is launched. And then we're just going for it. And we are surfing, you know, we thought the pandemic was the thing that we needed to navigate. We realized that the uprising around racial justice was something we absolutely had to, it's not even navigate, we had to metabolize, incorporate, think about everything through a lens that had been made so much clearer in that moment. And then there was a second wave of the pandemic, and now there is this assault on democracy and the things that we thought were unassailable. And then we will be coming through the inauguration and out the other side into that. The thing that enables us to go forward with confidence and also humility is our commitment to the independent voice and the meaning and importance of that in this moment. So the film festival isn't a distraction and a frivolity somewhere over there. It's a community gathering together to make meaning, to take comfort in each other, to recognize what is human and shared about each other, and also to recognize and value our differences. And that respect of different perspectives is kind of embodied in the shape of the festival, that people will be seeing this work from different places, not all in the same theatre in Park City, but from wherever they find themselves. And that to me is an extraordinary value. So yes, it's hard, but boy, is it worth it.
That was beautifully said. Just amazing. I'm curious, given what you were just talking about with the pandemic and the racial justice movement, what's happening politically, how is that showing up in the programming that you saw of the films that you saw? I'm sure it is, but how is it showing up in the programming for the films that you're seeing coming in for the festival this year?
Well, the programming process, so there's a team of screeners and programmers, and we, at the beginning of the year, when we opened the submissions in whenever it was, again, the before times, we actually didn't know if it was going to be feast or famine. Production had already stopped. Conditions for doing anything were impossibly difficult. It would have been presumptuous to think that filmmakers could get their films done in time for our festival, but nevertheless, should they be able to, we were going to be ready for them. Well, it turned out to be this year a feast of films. There is still work that has been delayed and may not have seen the light of day, and artists who just simply couldn't make the work. Maybe they were on the front lines, maybe they were sick from COVID, maybe they were dealing with that. But the work that we did get, and our submission numbers were remarkably similar to previous years, was still of a quality of previous years. And so what we saw, and I think it's interesting to contemplate that we may be the first festival that can really show a breadth of work made during the pandemic, that the kind of COVID creativity is there for people to see. We have in the festival films that address the pandemic head on, like Namfu Wang's In the Same Breath. She's a remarkable Chinese filmmaker, tenacious in her interrogation, and somewhat not fearless but brave in her interrogation of the Chinese government, how they handled COVID, but also laser focused on how the US government handled it. So that film takes the pandemic as its subject matter. It's the heart of it. It could only have been made during the pandemic. Other films are made during the pandemic, and so you see it, you're aware of it in the distance between the cast and how the form and style of the film, there is something about it which is unique to this moment. And then interesting, there are films that were made before the pandemic was ever contemplated or felt, which somehow are almost prophetic in speaking to it. Films in our World Dramatic competition, like The Pink Cloud, or The Dog Who Wouldn't Be Quiet, which posit that there is something out there that is invisible and can kill us, and so we have to stay in. And what happens when we're all staying in is like, this thing that was a alternate world is now a documentary, and it's so in that sense. When we think about the pandemic, there is definitely work that's in there, and that's very interesting this year. When we think about racial injustice, this is not a new topic. Filmmakers have been making work on this for as long as cinema has been around. And that's so right. To think that we would be seeing something special and unique this year is in a way to misunderstand what has been happening all the way through cinema and through particularly American US society. But it's there. and it is expressed very powerfully across the program. And then, I think the other thing to say is what we like to do is to follow the artists and to understand what they have noticed, what they have seen, and how they have expressed it in the ways that Michelle talked about, a distinctive vision, a sense that only they could have made this work. And yes, something that feels resonant with the times. But, as I've implied, when the film is made, doesn't necessarily give it the same meaning and resonance as when it meets its first audience. And so this work that we've seen, it will all mean something specific to this moment because of when and how we are watching it. So it's been really interesting. The program is tighter this year. We have designed the festival to try and make sure that it is a festival. It has a festival's energy. There are things happening at particular times, and if you miss them, you miss them. Having said that, we've also managed to kind of have our cake and eat it by incorporating a catch-up window. So if you miss it, you haven't missed it forever if you get into that second screening window. But also things are happening at the same time, and there's a buzz and an energy. But so we wanted to keep the program tighter, just over 70 features, 50 shorts, as opposed to maybe 116, 120 features last time. And we've compacted it into 7 days. So the hope is that once you have selected your outfits, Glenn, from the closet, you put time aside with the people who are in your pod and safe to really engage and have your best speakers up and your best screening environment so that you can just see this work and understand, even though that you may be confined to, and we are all confined to our own safe spaces, this festival can take you around the world and introduce you to people you would never have met, taken you to places you can no longer get to, and understand what this existence is and how we are all grappling with it together. So I just can't wait for it to start, because I want to know what audiences think of this work.
Well, we did get to see a few films when we were looking at projects for the fellowship, and so we were blown away, and I'm really thrilled to see what the reaction is to some of the films that you guys are going to start rolling out very shortly.
That's fantastic, Glenn. Can I just talk about New Frontier for a second while I'm all excited about that?
Absolutely, please do.
So New Frontier has always been a space. It's a space where art and technology and artistry meets, and it's been an exhibition space at the festival that has always been so popular and difficult to get into. This year, as we talked about the importance of different perspectives coming together, and this key point, which is often the meaning is made from where you are seeing something from, not simply what you are looking at. And so I've been talking about telescopes, and Shari Freelo, who's the chief curator of the New Frontier exhibition space, built an entirely new virtual experience, immersive experience, which is a platform that she's built in space, situated next to the International Space Station, and you can get there through the click of a button. And in there, there's three spaces: the gallery space for this incredible new work that we're showcasing this year as part of New Frontier, a social space which is using proximity audio, webcam and avatars, which means instead of being on the shuttle bus to talk about the films after their screenings, you through your laptop or through VR can go into the New Frontier space and bump into people and come across people and talk about films. And then thirdly, because that wasn't cool enough, she's built a whole cinema in this VR space. You do need a VR headset for that. So you can go in and have a big screen experience, and Users is one of the films that will be showing in that cinema house. And so New Frontier, we think of Sundance as being a space for imaginative possibility. The New Frontier space this year just knocks it out the park and is almost a prototype for what a festival might look like in the future using all this. So it's so exciting.
That's great. I'm really thrilled to hear you say that, especially because I think one of the things that I was really curious about is, that's that ability to connect with other people and to talk about films. That's one of the things I was really kind of thinking that I would be missing this year. So I'm glad that there's a little taste of that baked in. the new frontier space. I often have felt sometimes like there's a little bit of a tension, especially with the festival, because obviously, independent film money is the lifeblood of that ecosystem. And there's obviously a huge marketplace that has kind of sprouted up over the years around the Sundance Film Festival. It's a huge, a very important place in the ecosystem for producers to take their films and sell them. And I've often kind of felt like there's a little bit of an ambivalent relationship between the festival and this sort of ad hoc marketplace that's cropped up. And of course, that marketplace has changed over time. It was the Miramaxes previously, and then it was this, some of the streaming companies. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship of that ecosystem, and how do you navigate that? Do you kind of try to tamp it down, or because obviously it's tremendously important to your filmmakers?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's at the heart of it. That the marketplace, you can describe the marketplace in a different way and call it the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is the lifeblood. It's the environment in which we are all situated. And so we need one of the things the festival is there for to do is to amplify the new talent and artistry that is coming through every year that may otherwise have been overlooked and may have been overlooked by, a for-profit model of entertainment. So it's our role to say, look at this, you may have missed this. This is incredible. This person is incredible. This is a new thing that we are seeing. Come and see it. It's a festival of discovery. And in addition to more than half the program this year being first-time filmmakers, we have this incredible richness of work that we want to get to audiences. And the distribution mechanisms, the systems that allow films to be bought and sold because they are taking them to audiences on a much greater level than we could achieve, that is absolutely key for us. The thing that we want to keep a focus on, though, is the independent voice. And yes, in one sense, money is the lifeblood of it, but independent work is more about, for me at least, more about a mindset. It's, as Michelle said, it's a collaborative endeavor, but there is a distinct vision at the heart of that, which has a value whether or not it is seen as instantly commodifiable. So the industry that has gathered around this independent work is absolutely vital. Our role is ensuring that we keep the balance right. So this year we have many more titles that are still for sale than we perhaps have in recent years, which is certainly partly a function of the pandemic, but also a wish on our part to keep lifting up this work that may have been looked, to keep bringing in voices that have previously been held to the margins and bring them into a much more visible space. But we can't do that on our own and wouldn't wish to. This is a joint endeavor. So it's striking the balance. Keri, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you've said it beautifully. I think I've been coming to Sundance to the festival since 1991. And I came before I worked at Sundance as somebody who was working in film and television, meeting new talent, meeting projects. I don't think it's a question of tension as much, Glenn, as it is everyone has their roles, and what Tabitha just defined is so important, which is the curation, the creative choices that the program teams at Sundance make. It needs to be about the work itself, not about what the work can perform commercially in the world. And then the industry can come in and the press can come in and can help figure out how to understanding what a work is setting out to do and what its possibilities are, how to help it realize those. And so for us and working here now, I think it's actually a huge symbiosis. It's a hugely important part. I don't feel tension. I feel gratitude for the people that come and care about what it is we're programming. And I know on behalf of the filmmakers, huge excitement when they have a chance to know that a film that started as a germ of idea birthed very independently is going to reach so wide. So I feel it's a integral part of a Discovery Festival, and I'm really proud that Sundance, among all of the festivals, has some of the strongest track record of talent discovery and acquisitions. It's not why we do it, but I think it's a really great outcome for us.
Yeah, I just want to add that it really makes me think about sustaining artists, which is such an important thing for the Institute to be doing. And it lives alongside discovery of and launching new artists. But how does, looking at an artist's career and the artist, an artist's journey, and we want to be a partner to artists as they continue to work and continue to connect and engage audiences. So important. We need the industry to be a part of that equation.
And I feel like you, as an organization, you have really been very forward thinking. Sundance really was the first festival that I was aware of that really embraced the streaming platforms as partners and opened up an episodic sidebar. So I'm really curious. I know we're coming at the end of our time, but I do have one last question that I want to pose really for all of you, which is, what does Sundance and the Sundance Institute look like in 5 years or 10 years?
Who wants to grab that one?
Okay, I reserve the right not to have to predict more than a week in advance, given
that is a very fair point. A very fair point.
But we know that our commitment to independent artistry, to freedom of creative expression, to diversity of voices remains unwavering, and certainly will remain unwavering in 5 years. How we go about that, what the context is, what the conditions are in which we support artists and audiences, I have no idea. And I think we have to remain open. That's the only way we can get through these times, I think, is to remain open and flexible, not to have a grand plan. I'm learning that.
Well, maybe the grand plan is also listening to the artists and curiosity and intent. And I think what Tabitha just said echoes what I was talking about and Michelle was talking about really early, that clarity of purpose enables us to modulate and change how we go after it. But it does tether us. There's a couple things, though, I would also underline that I think Tabitha also hit on earlier. I think the idea, what we've learned, and Michelle has with some incredible colleagues built a program that takes some of our lab and artist community online called Sundance Collab. What we've learned from having the ability to scale our community through digital means while keeping the sort of integrity of intent behind it has been so exciting. And I think the pandemic, with all of its obvious downsides, has opened up an opportunity to have a much more continuous dialogue with a community of artists, and now with the festival platform with audiences. And I'm hoping that's going to shift something for us in terms of access and community building that we can really build on. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but I feel that there's some seeds that have been planted in the adversity of this year that are going to bear really exciting and surprising fruit in the future. So.
Yeah, and I know that we get to Sundance Collab with the Dolby Institute we're going to do a master class in June.
That's right.
On film music. So I'm really excited about that. And I know Peter Golub is as well going forward. But it's exciting to be, to be an organization who listens, interested in, and excited by partnerships, because we're not at it. We're not doing the wind is blowing here. We're not.
it's the El Nino hitting you in.
Yes. Here we go. We're not at this alone. This is, we need to, the change that's coming, that's coming and has been and always has been, is something that we have to be very aware of, listen to, but also follow the artist. I think that's such, what Tabitha said earlier, and I believe in that as well. Artists are unstoppable, and storytelling has power beyond words. And I would also say, and we've, as witnessing this over these last years, is that, that words matter, voices matter, stories matter. And, one of the important things that we're doing is making sure that all voices are heard and seen. And that's a big part of, kind of a stake in the ground for Sundance's work going forward.
Well, I think that's probably a perfect way to wrap it out. I really appreciate, and I appreciate you giving the shout out to and acknowledging Collab as well, a hugely important program. I got my first taste of it last summer. We did a little program on Collab with Ben Zeitlin and Alma Harrell, talking about their films, and looking forward, Michelle, to coming back this summer, as you say, and doing a sound design and music masterclass. So I know it's a crazy busy time. I really can't thank the three of you enough for making the time to join us on the Dolby Institute podcast. Michelle, Keri, Tabitha, good luck with the festival. I can't wait to sit down at my, I'm going to get my parka and sit in my living room and watch the film.
Thank you, Glenn. It's great to see you and see you on the virtual mountain.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Yeah.
Until we can all get together again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Keri Putnam, Tabitha Jackson, Michelle Satter for joining us on the show today. If you'd like to attend the virtual Sundance Film Festival this year, links for everything that we discussed are in the show notes, and you don't even need a plane ticket or a winter coat. If you enjoy the series, please consider leaving us a rating or review on iTunes or on the Apple or Google podcast apps. It really helps raise awareness for the series and helps us continue to grow. And once again, I'll ask you to go subscribe to our new dedicated podcast feed, which you can find via the links in the show notes. And you will not want to miss our next episode. I'm really excited. We're going to have David Fincher on the show, and he is going to be joined in conversation with his longtime sound design collaborator, Ren Kleiss. We're going to be talking about Mank. It's an incredible conversation with David and Ren, and you do not want to miss it. So please subscribe to the podcast now. We'll see you again next week. Until then, thank you for joining us. This is the Dolby Institute podcast, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. The producer and editor of the show is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry. Copywriting from Fayette Fox. Production support by Taylor Hines. And our Dolby Institute intern is Tristan Henriquez. Thank you for listening.